It's Friday, which means Pat and I are continuing our Penguins top 25 of the last 25 years with our own spin on it. Today, it's the top 5 moments, guys, and that's coming up right after this.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes. You can follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patric Hornqvist. You can follow him on all social media platforms at @SandandVerwet. You can follow the show's Twitter at @LO_Penguins, and you can follow us on Instagram at LockedOn_Penguins. Of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen/watch of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. And finally, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. I'm glad to be doing this show today because we have some bats living under our fascia right outside of our house. Thankfully, they're not inside our house, but I was thinking of becoming Batman and just putting on my suit and just going up there and spooking them out so they can go live somewhere else. So we're going to have to get that fixed here in the next couple of weeks. Never have dealt with that before, but saw a few fly out there this week. And I'm like, I don't think that's supposed to be a thing. So perks of being
in fairness though, Hunter, you got to remember, you are the nerd of this podcast, says the guy who's a pro wrestling fan, but Bruce Wayne's afraid of bats. He doesn't scare them. So you got to face your fears and you got to go scare those bats away.
Well, to crawl up into where they are under the fascia, which is kind of near the roof, you have to be like almost like an ant. So I'm just gonna be like,
perfect job for me.
Exactly. You're like 5 foot nothing. You could pass for Frodo Baggins from Lord of the Rings, but that's okay. I'm gonna be like Ant-Man, except I'll have my Batman suit on, and they can just swarm around me, and then I can just get them to leave and go to a cave. But hey, that's fun. Perks of being a homeowner. 7 months in, we got to drop a good chunk of change to get these things out of here. And well, that'll happen in the next couple of weeks. But hey, that's why I'm glad we're doing a show today. Talk about some players that had some really good moments over the last 25 years, Pat. And let's start with the first player on this list, Bryan Rust, Mr. Game 7 of the 2010s. 2 goals against the Tampa Bay Lightning in Game 7, 2016, including the game winner. That one, a little bit of a squeaker past Andrei Vasilevsky. The first one, what a rocket of a shot that was. Absolutely beautiful stuff. And then, remember, Pat, 2017, Game 7 against the Capitals. He gets the goal to open the scoring for the Penguins before they eventually won that game 2-0. So, Mr. Game 7 right there. Just 2 awesome moments. Hell, not even 2, 3, just because he has 3 goals. 3 goals in 4 total Game 7s throughout his career. Easy one to start with considering how big those goals were for the Penguins.
Right. And a fun thing about that is when you go back and you watch the 2016 Stanley Cup DVD, whatever we're calling it these days, that's me showing my age that I'm saying DVD, holy crap. But he recalls that game and he says, I can't remember who it was that said it to him, but someone was like, you just became a Pittsburgh legend, right? You scored 2 Game 7 goals to send us to the Stanley Cup final. And that was, I don't want to say that's where the legend of Bryan Rust was born or when he really jumped onto the scene. It's probably hard to quantify when Bryan Rust became who he is now. That's kind of been a gradual build over the last almost decade with him. But it was when you really started to see the seeds being planted that he was more than just a bottom 6 player. He was going to be hopefully a pretty significant contributor to the Penguins' success in the foreseeable future. But like you said, the second goal, that's just good hard work. He just stays with the play, sees an opening and puts it in the net. The first goal, just an absolute snipe by him. And yeah, Andrei Vasilevsky wasn't quite Andrei Vasilevsky yet, but the way he stepped in that series, very similar to Bryan Rust in the sense where you went, this might be a guy here in the near future. And sure enough, he's one of the top 5 goalies in the National Hockey League right now.
100%. I mean, I remember when he came in for Ben Bishop, and I still remember, Pat, watching that game when he got hurt, and you could hear the scream so loud it came like right through the TV. I can't even imagine how it must have been in the arena. Like, that injury was really brutal to see. And remember being like, who the heck is the backup? We all quickly found out who Andre Vasilevsky was. I'm like, yeah, I think this guy definitely has a future in the NHL considering how good he played in that series. Still would have been awesome to see Bishop play that entire series because he was having a tremendous season for the Lightning, but Vasilevsky was also real good coming in relief for him. But yeah, just great shot by Rust to open the scoring, gets the little bit of a garbage goal for the game winner. And then, as we mentioned, for the game in Washington, a game that it felt like a lot of people were not picking the Penguins to win just because of how the previous 2 games went. But Penguins were still the Capitals' daddy at that point. Like, until, they beat them when it mattered, Penguins were the favorite. And then obviously that changed in 2018. But there you go. Like, the Penguins' best players and their heroes, especially Bryan Rust, stepped up when it mattered in that game. And that's what mattered, obviously. Next up on the list, Jordan Staal, his shorthanded goal against Detroit, 2009, Game 4 to tie up the series at home. I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago where the series going into Game 4 was going exactly the way it did in 2008. Red Wings win the first 2 games at the Joe because the Penguins could barely win there. The Penguins win Game 3. They cut that deficit to 2 games to 1, but then you don't want history to repeat itself. You don't want to go down 3-1 against this Red Wings team because if you do, it's curtains. You saw what happened in 2008. Well, Jordan Staal gets one of the biggest goals of that Stanley Cup run, probably the biggest goal outside of Max Talbot's winner in Game 7 in that series. The way that he was able to take the puck shorthanded, go right around Brian Rafalski, who I still think is one of the more underrated defensemen in NHL history. The way that he was able to do that power move, go backhand, forehand to the stick side, past Chris Osgood, who was playing very deep in his net. Just gorgeous stuff. And at that moment, and then right after with the Crosby goal, that was when I was still like, okay, this was different. Like, I can see them actually pulling this one off, because he doesn't score that goal, Penguins probably lose that game. They probably don't win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. And it's appropriate we're bringing this one up today because I don't want to bring the mood down, but stay with me. Yesterday was 16 years since my father passed away, not long after the Penguins won the Stanley Cup in 2009. But when they were on that run in 2009, me being a 17, 18-year-old around that season and being the hockey fanatic that I was, my dad being the hockey coach and hockey fanatic and former hockey journalist that he was, we were battling during that run, debating the Penguins, debating hockey. And, at one point my mom banished the 2 of us to the basement to watch certain games because we wouldn't shut the hell up. But I remember that was a moment where him and I were hand in hand because Staal scores that goal. They go on to win the game. And I say to him, they've got a legit shot now because the Detroit Red Wings, especially those Detroit Red Wings, did not give up shorthanded goals.
No,
they were almost automatic on the power play. Forget giving up shorthanded goals. They were either going to score on you on the power play, or at the very least, they were going to hem you in for 2 minutes and run you ragged. So them being able to score that goal, Staal scoring that goal specifically, that was the first moment both him and I went, this is different. Like, They may not win the Stanley Cup, but they are closer than they were last year. This is a team that is meeting the moment. This is a team that is not scared of the spotlight like they were last year. And I know that you and I try to be analytical. We try to be rational, but that is a moment where momentum was a real thing because he scored that goal and Mellon Arena was deafening. And for the rest of that game, the momentum from the fans, the momentum from the building really pushed that team to win the game. And yeah, they go on to Game 5 and get absolutely smacked around, but we know how it ended. But without that goal from Jordan Staal, I really doubt they win the Stanley Cup in 2009.
They probably don't even win that game in Game 4, to be honest. They probably go down 3-1, and who knows, that series may end in 5 games because up until that point, Pat, they could hardly ever win at the Joe. Like it was kind of a house of horrors for them in these 2 playoff runs where a win there, very rare for Penguins. They obviously had that Sakura game winner, which was awesome, but you lose games 1 and 2 at the Joe in 08, you lose games 1 and 2 in 09. Just history was not really on your side there. You probably needed another miracle if you were to lose game 4 and then going into game 5. But hey, I guess we'll never know. The Penguins won that series in 7 games. That's what matters at the end of the day. But still, massive goal from Jordan Staal. And I know he's been gone a long time. I'll still always have great memories of Jordan Staal growing up as a kid. I'll never blame him for wanting to go play with his brother. The Penguins offered him a big contract. He said, hey, I appreciate it, but I want to go play with my brother. So he signed a long contract in Carolina. He's going to retire there. His family's there. I wish him nothing but the best. It's been a while. So,
and while he's not a true number 1 guy, he's definitely better than a 3rd-line center. And if he remained a Penguin for the majority of his career, he was never going to crack into the top 6, save for injury. So totally understand, along with the family stuff, why he wanted to move on.
Yeah, I don't think he'd ever get into the top 6 full time unless they somehow, move someone like Gino, but that was never going to happen regardless. He was always going to retire a member. The Penguins, same for Sid. So he would have just been a 3rd-line center here. And hey, I get it. He wants to go play with his brother, gets a long contract in Carolina. I'll never not fault him for that. But that would do it for this first segment. Coming up in the second segment, we're going to continue this list with 3 other awesome moments from the last 25 years. That's coming up right after this. Before we get to that, though, we have to tell you all about our first sponsor, and that is Game Time. We have all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. Tired of endlessly scrolling trying to find the best deal? Game Time's zone deals pick the best seats in your section for you. Ever wonder what your view will actually look like before you buy the ticket? The app shows your full view, so there are no surprises when you get to the arena. And with Game Time, the price you see is the price you pay with no hidden fees. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patric and Pat. Number 3 on this list in terms of the top 5 moments, guys. Chris Kunitz, Game 7 against Ottawa, effectively ended the Senators franchise for almost the next decade. I have to at least joke about that a little bit because it's just fun to talk about. No disrespect to our Locked On Senators faithful who do a really good job with their show and all the Ottawa Senators fans out there. But, gets the first goal of the game. You have Justin Schultz with an amazing celebration. I felt like at that time, this is the game winner, Pat. They never blow leads that late in the third period. I'm celebrating like, hey, he's going to have the game winner. And then Erik Karlsson does his thing, and he was absolutely tremendous throughout that entire playoff run. Played on one leg that whole time. I think if the Senators had won the Stanley Cup that year, he easily would have gotten the Conn Smythe, would not have been close. But Chris Kunitz is the hero in double overtime with the kind of knuckle puck that went past Craig Anderson. What a celebration. That was actually my wallpaper during the part of my time in college. I changed that several years later. But one of my favorite Chris Kunitz moments out of so many during his Penguins tenure. It's funny. You know, a moment I actually just saw on my Instagram a couple of days ago. Do you remember his big hit on Kimmo Timonen when the Flyers faithful just got up out of their seat and they were just like, what the hell was that? Probably one of the biggest hits I've ever seen while watching a game. So wanted to bring that up as well. But when you needed a hero, I know this was towards the late stages of Kunitz's career, but when they needed him the most, he was there. And, I always hear it, Pat. Fresh from the bench is Crosby. And then Doc takes it away.
And I know that a lot of Penguins fans have soured on him since he's moved on with Mike Sullivan. But this at the time, this is obviously only his second season as the Penguins head coach at the time. And it showed what a good pulse that he had on the team, because if you look back on that 2017 run, I don't want to say that Chris Kunitz was a liability, but he was certainly a shell of his former self. He was not the guy who won the Stanley Cup with them in 2009. Hell, he was barely the guy that played in 2016. He was really coming up towards the end of his career, but he knew, Sullivan that is, that the guy still has something to offer this group. He is still going to be a part of this team's success. And yeah, that's a bit of a knuckle puck goal by Kunitz, but that was the chemistry he had developed with Sid. As soon as he saw Sid go behind the net and then cut back, he knew exactly where to be. And it was right in that soft spot, right in that no man's land in the top of the slot. And what do you know? Crosby puts it right on a platter for him. And seemingly against all odds, the Penguins go back to the Stanley Cup final for the second straight year against an Ottawa team that gave them every bit they could handle for 7 games.
It's funny. I remember going into that series, I'm like, I feel like this is going to be the quote unquote easiest of the series so far. I was way wrong on that one. It was just a completely different style that the Penguins were going up against. You could tell they were getting really frustrated in the early part of that series, Pat, especially at home, where they were just not generating much of anything. And the adjustments that Mike Sullivan was able to make after the Penguins went down 2-1 to the Senators in that series were really good. Like the way they were able to actually generate offense, the way they were able to get past the trap that the Senators were setting in their own zone was really good. So it was just a good showing of the adjustments that Mike Sullivan was able to make at that point during his Penguins tenure. Next up on the list, our top 5 moments, guys. Nick Bonino, 2016, Game 6, the game winner over the Washington Capitals, the game that probably should not have went to overtime. Let's be real here. Too many self-inflicted wounds in the third period where I wanted to grab my hair and just pull it out with all these stupid delay of game penalties, and everyone in the arena I could see was just like, what in the hell is going on? But in the end, it didn't matter. The Penguins were able to win that game thanks to Nick Bonino. And Pat, originally, because my memory apparently was almost fading, I was like, oh wait, this was the Bonino call, but no, that was the game 1 against the Sharks. That was the Nick Bonino call from the Hockey Night in Punjabi team, which they were at the Stanley Cup parade later on that year. They were able to do the Bonino thing for all the Penguins fans at the parade. Fantastic. They all did such a great job throughout that run. I believe the play-by-play commentator who was on that team is now doing a lot more other games for Sportsnet on their main team, not the Punjabi team, Pat. He does stuff for the main team now, which is awesome. He's a great play-by-play announcer. But still, what a moment for Nick Bonino in that one.
Big redemption too for him because, like you said, the third period, they took all those delay of game penalties, and Bonino's was kind of a fluke where he just kind of batted a puck out of midair and it hit the right exact angle to go out of play. And he was one of the people who was penalized. So big redemption for him. And like you said, that game, that was maybe the truest 50-50 game between those two teams in that run of all 3 years, where there was really no clear advantage. It was 51-49, 50-50, you name it, because both teams were just heavyweights throwing haymakers for 3 straight series. And and my favorite thing about this goal, and I don't know if anybody who was working for game operations during that series, if you listen to this show, you know where to find us. I won't burn a source. Did you guys blare the siren louder than normal? Because I think you did. Because every time I watch that goal back and I hear them hit the siren a second time, I'm like, you know what? That's louder than it normally is. And I love that kind of petty when it comes to a rival. So if you did that, at Consol Energy Center at the time, feel free to reach out to us and let us know, because I think you did.
I think so too. The Siren, man. Oh, I even outside of that, just whenever they play, this is different. Whenever they play the Jam Siren at PBG Paints Arena, it's just so nostalgic. Like, just keep playing it. They do it during all the big moments in the third period. Keep that up, especially when we get more big moments in PPG in future years. Not going to have it this year, probably. Also, probably not next year, but a little further down the line. Keep bringing that in. I love the Jam Siren. I had to go on a little bit of a tangent about that, Pat. I'm sorry, but
no, I get it.
Go ahead. Oh,
no,
sorry.
I'm agreeing with you. It's such a great thing. It's so fun. It's so nostalgic. I hope when this team is back in the postseason, we get more of those moments, because God, are they fun.
Absolutely. I agree. But rounding out this top 5 before we move on to Fan Take Friday for the final segment, Patric Hornqvist, Game 6, 2017, Stanley Cup winning goal over the Nashville Predators, where he just banks it off Pecorine and in. Just a textbook Patric Hornqvist type goal. I still kind of wonder to this day if that game had gone to overtime or the ref had not blown that call. Like, let's be real, the Penguins got a little bit lucky with that. If the Penguins had lost that, if that game had gone to overtime, would they have still won that game? Again, I guess we'll never know. But Patric Hornqvist, game winner when you needed him the most against his former team. Come on, man. You really can't make it up. And then his best friend, Carl Hagelin, gets the empty netter to seal that win and the Penguins back-to-back Stanley Cups. Just amazing. But that goal was textbook Patric Hornqvist.
It was everything Patric Hornqvist ever was. It was right at the net front, side of the net, you name it, but he's crashing the cage. And my favorite thing about it is when they were getting ready to wrap the game up, when they're trying to defend the lead and not give up a goal to have it tied, Sullivan wanted to put Hornqvist out there, and he basically looked at Sullivan and was like, no, I can't. Like, I'm way too overwhelmed for what just happened. I'm not going to be able to play. I'm not going to be useful. And like, how could you not be? You just scored what is a potential Stanley Cup winning goal against the team that made you Mr. Irrelevant as the last pick in the draft. And again, just the perfect Patric Hornqvist moment, stepped up when he needed to. And underrated part of Patric Hornqvist in those 2 Stanley Cup runs. Yeah, he gets all the accolades for being the energy guy, for being the guy who everybody said, I'm pretty sure he shows up to the rink screaming. But in both of those runs, 16 and 17, just a highlight reel of clutch goals or big goals. When you needed someone to step up in those runs, more often than not, it was Patric Hornqvist.
100%. I mean, you go back to even 2016, for example, game 4 against Capitals. Remember, Pat, Chris Letang was suspended for that game. And I was really nervous because I'm like, without the way that Letang is playing, I don't know if they're going to be able to, fill his shoes even for one game, just because he was playing at such an elite level that season. But the overtime winner literally came out of nowhere off a broken play. Honestly, it was the puck went right to him off of a Capital player's stick, and he just made no mistake. Again, he was so clutch throughout both of those runs, and just it was for Jim Rutherford to make that trade. It was the how do you describe it? The perfect trade at the perfect time to really have it be like a trend center for the organization, kind of also like a reset. Like, you're getting out James Neal, who during his prime with the Penguins was a very, really good goal scorer. You bring in a different player who he can still score, but he can, be a bit more of a rat. He can energize the locker room. He's great both on and off the ice. It was everything the Penguins needed in a type of trade that maybe shakes up the room.
It did, and it made the culture what it needed to be. And I'll say this. A lot of people point to the Chicago game a couple years ago as the reason why everything in the NHL has changed and the Florida Panthers are now the mini dynasty that they're putting together. But I will ask you this, Hunter, and I know you know the answer. When Bill Zito took over as general manager for the Florida Panthers, what was the first move he made?
Hornqvist for Matheson.
He traded for Patric Hornqvist. The guy knows how to reset a culture and make the team better. And I know people will say, oh, it's just an energy guy like Patric Hornqvist. No. That man sets a culture and people follow it. And he was a big part of the foundation, the Florida Panthers becoming what they are now. And he was a huge part of the Penguins becoming Stanley Cup champions.
100%. So that wraps up this part of our top 25. We have 2 more parts to get to, Pat, over the next couple of weeks. Next week, we're going to do the top 5 of the Stanley Cup wins. Really looking forward to that. And then the week after, to round this up, the top 5 of the last 25 years overall. You guys probably have a good idea of who is in that top 5. It's very easy to guess, but we're going to get to that in a couple of weeks. But next week, people, we got the top 5 of the Stanley Cup wins. But that'll do it for this second segment. Coming up to end the show, it's Friday. You know what that means. Fan Take Friday. We're going to get to your takes, your questions right after this. However, before we get to that, we have to tell you all about our first or second sponsor, that is, and that is FanDuel. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions, so whether you are calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. For example, you can vote for Josh Allen to win the MVP, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes. If there's someone else that you want to vote for MVP, you can do that. For your pick to win the Super Bowl, if you want to pick the Eagles to go back-to-back, you can do that. If you want to pick the Chiefs to win another one, if you want to pick the Steelers to win the Super Bowl this year, you can do that as well. Or you can even parlay your division winner dark horses. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets right now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. That is FanDuel. Play your game. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick and Pat. This first one comes from PensFan0082, who asks, do you think the Penguins will ever do a rebrand? Maybe at some point down the line. I think that's a long-term question. Right now, there is no reason to do it. I love the colors that they have right now. The jerseys they have are awesome. The home and away jerseys right now are beautiful. I still think there's some rumor that they might get a new third jersey at some point this season. There have been a couple of rumors connecting it to be like a throwback version, Pat, of a different Robo Penguin. I'm not sure if that's fully confirmed, but we'll have to see. But their home and away jerseys, one of the best in the league. Yeah. So I don't think a rebrand is coming anytime soon. Long term, potentially, but there is no need to do it. I love these jerseys.
It's entirely possible. I mean, every team does it for the most part, save for original 6 teams who just kind of tweak and change what they have. But I'm with you. I mean, the current setup is perfect. Like the skating penguin logo with the golden triangle, it doesn't get any better than that. I know I'm not a fan of the Robo Penguin. I know some people are, but like, it's such a perfect, what they have now is just perfect. Like those are the 2 best jerseys in the team's history. I know that they won in 2009 in those weird Vegas gold jerseys, but I mean,
but in the history though, they've had some really good jerseys even before.
They have
the Vegas gold. I don't like.
The Vegas gold was a mistake, but that was that weird Reebok Edge era where everybody was doing weird rebrands. I don't hate the diagonal Pittsburgh as much as some do. I know it's a ripoff of the Rangers. I actually didn't hate their early 2020s, late 2010s gold that they had that they wore for a little bit. The thing I didn't like about them, though, was like using the skating penguin without the golden triangle. Like, I don't know why you would do that. It's weird. But yeah, I mean, long term, like it's entirely possible, but I don't see them doing a rebrand anytime in the near future.
I hate saying this. Those jerseys you just talked about, though, they look like pee. Like, I'm sorry, they look like pee. So I did not really like those.
The problem
is them at home games for the playoffs, and I'm like, we don't need to be doing this right now, guys. Just switch back to the regular home jerseys.
The problem with that is, though, I look at it this way: is their yellow, gold, whatever you want to describe it as, that they have. It's really difficult to do a primary yellow gold jersey without it looking like a disaster. And that's probably the best they were going to get with a primary gold jersey.
Right. That's fair. Again, I just like when they wore those alternate ones, I believe that was that series against the Islanders. Yes, that was the one. They wore those for the home games. I'm just like, we don't need this. You don't need to be different for the sake of being different. Just go back to what works. We don't need. Thankfully, they did. I just like it was just so ugly to look at. So I don't want to spend too much more on it. They were just ugly. This next one comes from Theodore Belmont. How long do you think Chris Letang will play? His game really stunk last season after the All-Star break. His game definitely did go downhill after the All-Star break. His game was going downhill throughout the entire season, in my opinion. I think he's going to try everything in his power to finish out this entire contract with the Penguins. Whether he does, that is to be determined. I think at least the next couple of years he is going to play. After that, we'll see. Again, I'm not fully sure he is going to finish this entire contract with them, but I think at the very least this year, and I think next year as well. So I would go at least 2 more seasons.
This year is going to be a massive indicator for how much longer he's going to play. I know, hot take by me, but I said it on a show earlier this week. I want to see how he changes and adapts his game, because you can see that he doesn't have the foot speed that he once did, but you can still see a lot of the raw talent is still there. He just has to find a way to adjust. If he can make some tweaks and changes here, because of the kind of shape he keeps himself in, I can see him finishing out the contract. Is he going to be prime Chris Letang? Absolutely not. But can he be a useful, valuable defenseman for the majority of the contract? If he adjusts the right way, I absolutely can see that being the case. Health being a major question mark, because we know the ringer he has been put through, both injury wise and just straight up health wise. So we'll see what happens with all of that. But again, I want to see how he changes and adapts his game this season. And that to me will be the biggest indicator of how much longer he can play in the NHL.
That's fair. Again, at least this season, maybe he'll have a decision to make after this year, even though he'll be under contract with the Penguins. But I'm going to go out on a limb, say at least 2 more seasons. After that, to be determined. But that's my answer on that. A couple more to get to here before we wrap up today. This one, what are your guys' expectations for this season with a new coaching staff, and how will the team finish in the standings? So if you're talking about in terms of Metro Division, anywhere between 5th to 8th is probably what I'm looking at right now. You look at the top of the Metro, Carolina, New Jersey, I think are the 2 best teams in this division right now. I would put Washington at 3rd. I think the Capitals are good enough to be a playoff team. I don't think they're going to be a serious contender. After that, 4th, maybe the Rangers, Blue Jackets, TBD on the Blue Jackets though, but I'd probably put the Blue Jackets and the Rangers right there. And then, Islanders, Flyers, Penguins somewhere down there. But I would say 5th to 8th in the Metro. If you're talking overall standings, I would say bottom 6 to 12 in the league. I think there's a path to them being mid, as the kids like to say, but I think a lot of things have to go right. Goaltending has to be a bit better. They can't be as bad as we think they're going to be defensively. They got to get all the depth scoring and all that. We still have to see if they make any more trades. New coaching staff, though, I still want to see how these guys develop some of these younger players. I want to see how Dan Muse does with Mark McGorty, Ville Koivunen, some of these other young players that are going to be pushing for spots, Philip Hollander. I want to see how a player like Tommy Novak does in Muse's system, just because we barely got to see him last year. So, I'm excited for the fresh, innovative ideas. And then again, as for the standings, somewhere for Metro in that 5th to 8th range. If they get top 4, I'd be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, it's about where I'm at. And I would say my expectation for this season is no expectation. Yeah, I don't want to pretend like they're going to be some sleeper candidate that goes on a run and surprises everybody. I also don't want to get people's hopes up that they're going to tank and get Gavin McKenna next summer. But I look at this team, and my main expectation, or I guess wish for this team going into next season, put on the lab coat, get out the big goggles, and be a mad scientist, Dan Muse. Try everything. You're not a Stanley Cup contender. You're probably not a playoff contender, a very, very long shot of making the playoffs. Try everything, from line combinations to putting players in certain positions, to experimenting with the goaltending. Just try whatever you want, because you need in the near to far term, you need to find out how good these young guys are, and you need to see what you still have left with this veteran core, and throw everything at the wall, see what sticks. And then once this team starts to develop some of its prospects, and once you see how much these older guys got left in the tank, then you start applying that in 2 years when you hope this team is going to be a little bit more competitive.
And when you hope you have a top prospect to look forward to. When I mean a top prospect pack, I mean like a potential franchise changer that could be on your team for years to come. But still, we have to see if they're able to get that player over the next couple of years. Last one, this comes from Ben on YouTube. He goes, I know this is last week's post, but why are big names like Elliot Friedman still talking about Sid like he is going somewhere? Heard it on 32 Thoughts when they did their summer update. It just keeps circulating. He wants to be traded and all this stuff, even though he has never said that. Why do people think this is going to change? Ben, people are bored. Like, they want clicks. People are bored. They're talking about it when there's no need to talk about it. I don't want to waste any more time on it than we already have. It's a non-story. He's not going anywhere. And yeah, that's all I really have to say on it.
So it's the off season. I mean, look at us right now. We're doing Fan Take Friday in the top 25 of the 2000s. Like, the content beast demands fed, and nothing is going to get you better clickbait than Crosby's miserable. Crosby wants out. Yep. Crosby's going to be traded. Again, I wrote about this a few weeks ago. I'll say it here. Is there a possibility it could happen? Yeah. There's a possibility anything could happen. But at the end of the day, I look at it this way. And this is obviously the end of it for us because we're not going to spend too much time on it. The Penguins traded Jake Guentzel before Crosby signed an extension. If there was no better sign that they were going into a rebuild, it was trading Jake Guentzel. If Crosby didn't want to be around for that, he had every opportunity to not extend with the team and ask to go elsewhere, or just walk to free agency. He did neither thing. He extended with the team. That's it.
People got to get over it. But again, people just need their clicks. They need their talk because they're bored. I don't want to spend any more time on it. And Sid will also get very mad at you if you even try asking about it. That is literally true, by the way. He will start getting pissed off. So I hope no one asks about it this year because it would be ridiculous. But I think that will do it. Actually, though, Pat, one more thing. Congratulations to Susie Cool, who's the Penguins' new in-game arena host, taking over for Jaden Becker. Pat, you know her personally a little bit. You worked with her. I'm going to hand this over to you just to end the show.
Susie rules. Like, I can't overstate it. I worked with her for a season when I was with the Nailers. She was one of our part-time in arena hosts. Crushed it. Absolutely crushed it. She's done play-by-play for minor league baseball. She's done all kinds of other media, including she had a streaming show with KDK TV about the Steelers, Every Blade of Grass with Cool and Cass. Awesome show. Her and Cassidy Wood did a hell of a job on that. She's going to do a phenomenal job as the Penguins in-arena host. So congratulations to her. Good. I don't want to say a good friend of mine, but we are friends. So congrats to my pal Suze. Happy for you. Looking forward to seeing you do your thing at PPG this season.
And just like how we had Jaden on the show, we're going to have to get Susie on the show at some point as well. But that'll do it for today's episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to / watch this one. I know we went a bit long today, but we just had quite a bit to say when it came to our top 25 and then Fan Take Friday, of course. But again, that'll do it for this one. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. We'll talk with you all again on Monday.